Welcome to Secrets Worth Sharing, a series all about having better, more approachable conversations about child sexual abuse. This episode is specifically about deafness and CPTSD, and for that, I am joined by Sabian.
Hi, I'm Sabian. I'm a deaf entrepreneur. I'm a founder of Deaf Hands. We work on creating artificial intelligence and augmented reality to help advance deaf communities in the future.
This section is called The Secrets Out, and it is practical advice on what you should and shouldn't say to a victim of child sexual abuse by people with lived experience. This episode is specifically about deafness and CPTSD, and because I'm a hearing person, obviously I'm going to pass over to Sabian here to give the advice because it's going to be fake coming from me. So Sabian, what are some bad examples of things people have said to you in relation to this topic?
Okay, so for me, I would say one example would be people assuming the gender of your abuser based on me being a male and assuming that it was a male. I would say it's a bad thing to assume gender because for some people it puts them in a position of feeling that they can't speak any more on that. It also makes them believe that not validating their experience in that sense, assuming gender rather than allowing the person to reveal the gender, the extent of what happened and that stuff. Okay. So the second thing I would say would be not to explain away. So for me, the first person I told about my abuse said to me that my abuser was probably just experimenting. Just experimenting.
Wow.
My first abuser was in their teens. I was maybe 4 or 5, and I was saying, there's a period in time when your children want to explore their sexuality, and it was like, yeah, but I was 5. It's not quite. So explaining away on behalf of the abuser can also be a silencing. You can silence someone or invalidate their experience by doing that. So I would say that's the second thing. Don't explain on behalf of an abuser if you weren't there.
Yeah, exactly.
Very dangerous in that territory to step into, and you can also alienate that person from seeing you with someone they can trust, especially if they came to you, understand, it can push you right back.
Interestingly, it goes back to a lot of the advice you were talking about of just sitting back and observing and properly listening. Like, I find a lot of people I've spoken to, they don't need an answer from the person they're speaking to. They want to just speak and get it out. I think a lot of the work you've done on talking about body language and stuff like that is part of that journey, right? Of actually showing up for someone.
Yeah, definitely. If you didn't show up, a lot of people will leave things unsaid, I think. A lot of people have spoken to me about, there's a lot of women actually, a lot of women have spoken to me about sexual abuse they've experienced, but a lot of what they experienced was unsaid. And I was able to pick up on the silences and things that they understand in terms of what they weren't saying. Understand? But because I've experienced it myself, I can't compare to what it must be like for a woman to be penetrated in that way. Understand? It's a very different thing, and that's why it's hard to compare the two. But the outcomes, the feelings that we feel, and that stuff can be very similar, and sometimes, and knowing how to navigate that is very crucial.
And a completely personal journey, right?
Yeah.
Moving to the more positive things, have you got 2 examples of good things?
Positive. The most positive thing I always get is how courageous I am for speaking. Or brave. Weirdly enough, inspiring as well. I find it very interesting, but it's probably the most positive things that have come from. I think most people don't know how to deal with that being, I suppose. So the positive stuff is like, you're courageous for saying this. No, I wish I had your courage, or no, I wish I was as brave as you, kind of thing. So I feel like that might be the most people are able to give in that situation, especially if I'm not an expert or what have you. Besides that, giving me space. The second thing was giving me space to share and talk about and not judge.
Yeah.
It's mostly women, again, who give me the space to.
It's like what you said about the confusion, right? Like on the one hand, you're getting space from women, on the other hand, you've had this bad experience.
So that's why I say it's hard for me to resort to hating women and all that stuff, because it's like I've got the best of both worlds in some ways, and like my blackness and my deafness, like there's an intersection there, and it's hard to put everything down in that one moment, you know, and judge women as a result of that. It's just very hard. Like, it's very hard to be in between the two. You know, one side I've got some of the greatest women in my life, and then on the other side I have experienced some of the worst of women, and in some hands where it's kind of like it balances out with, you know.
Like his dominoes. Why is he that?
You see the worst of women are capable of, and then see the best of what they're capable of. So, yeah.
On the comment on you being brave, I'd love to know more what you think, because when someone says that to me, I feel grateful and I understand where it's coming from, but a huge part of me feels very, very sad, because it's like, how are we in a world that has silenced people who've experienced child sexual abuse so much that even just to say you've experienced it is like the biggest thing that you could do. And I get it, because I was silenced for many, many years. But when someone says that to me, sometimes I just feel so sad, because I'm like, I know so many people who are going through it too and just haven't said. Yeah.
Oh. I didn't really like being told I was courageous or brave, to be fair. I would say that it's the result of being able to share of your darkness in a world where we are pushed not to share, not to reveal your darkness, love and light. And then when you add the religious side to things, you know, that we are pushed towards the light, but never the darkness. You know, we're made afraid of the darkness. We talk about Satan's in the darkness, we talk about ghosts in the darkness, we talk about, you understand, all these things are lurking in the darkness, so you should never go there. But sometimes, like I said, the things that made us in our darkness. So it's a knock-on effect of a lot of our authenticity being suppressed. Yeah, the boundaries are important, but it goes both ways, and understand, you know, what to share, what not to share, and all that stuff, when to share, things like that is all important in the grand scheme. So I find myself not talking about it so much, because I don't want my life to revolve around sexual abuse and all that stuff. I want to be, this is what happened, this is how I've dealt with it, and this is what you can do, you know, to deal with it too. But I can't guide you on that path. I'm not a therapist, I'm not, you understand, I'm just someone who experienced it. And for me, I always found that I admired people who had experienced things first. So I don't read a book from someone who hasn't experienced what they're writing about. You understand? And I've always wanted to be a person that can lead people through the experiences that I've lived through. So that's why I do so much.
That's why, for me, the one thing I feel I really am in a position to help with is this whole practical advice from people who've gone through it kind of thing. What you should, what you shouldn't say, and here are some experiences. And that's why we're sitting here, isn't it? I really hope that this conversation inspires you to start some of your own. And I think from learning about Sabian, especially about body language, observing, sitting in silence and watching, you learn so much more about how to be a better listener, you know? A deaf man has taught me to listen better, and I'm very grateful for it. So thank you. And we just remember to observe. Look at some children in your life. Watch how they're interacting with others. You might pick up on something that we would have wished that someone had picked up for us many years ago. So with that, we'll end. We'll say goodbye. Thank you. If you like this, you'll also enjoy our longer podcast episode on this theme, with more juicy bits, practical advice, and personal stories. Check it out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or go to www.secretsworthsharing.com.